All this is Dr. Mobeen Sayed, and you are in the Cool Beans Cafe. My apologies, this camera is quite finicky. This is Sony Alpha 7C. It is supposed to be connected to my mobile through which I can control it, and it is just not connecting. So, this is what you get. I cannot change the aperture speed or anything. So, you can see my hands. Anyways, apologies. All right. So, how about we do a quick news roundup? Today is the last day of the month as well. If you are not yet a member of Patreon, become a patron or a Substack member. Um, and I was also thinking of doing something which may be interesting. Tell me, how do you feel? I was thinking about talking about one specific disease as if disease education for a specific number of patients who are of that disease. So no, of course I don't practice in the US, so no prescriptions or no advices, but talking about the disease itself. So, and just have one or two people in there on Zoom call and directly have a discussion with them to help them be educated about it. The reason, um, my own family members, it is actually astonishing for me that my own family members, some of them, have diseases that are not properly managed by various doctors, and they go to one doctor and then go to another doctor and a third doctors, and they're spending money and they're getting their labs done, and then for some reason they speak with me for something else, and then they say, I've been running around with this issue, and I request them that, can we talk a little more if you are open to it? And it changes the game for them. It changes understanding. Doing Googling is something else, but sitting down with an expert to say, I'm calling myself expert, uh, to say, here is what happens, and here is how um, things are managed. Here is something that doctors can control. Here is something that they cannot control. So I'll give you a few examples. A friend of mine talked about his family member who had urinary incontinence, meaning they would have their urine voided accidentally. And they had gone to the doctor. Doctor gave them antibiotics, which is makes sense for UTIs. Didn't work. They did the culture and gave more antibiotics. Didn't work, and simply said, we don't know what is going on. Never did any profile to understand, do they have diabetes? Is the diabetes uncontrolled? Is there a problem with the bladder control because of um, the urge, the feeling of urge, the parasympathetic and sympathetic systems and the sensory systems, are they working correctly? Is the patient not even aware that they have a full bladder and need to void, and so on? There was nothing. And sitting down, explaining, change the game. Just some ideas for, here is what can be done. So my point is that sometimes patient education, other than Google and WebMD, is more important than the medication and prescriptions or the doctors. So tell me if um, that will be something that is interesting. And the other was to sit down with the folks on the Patreon side or Substack side, those who are becoming paid member. Actually, can you imagine YouTube turned on after beating and punishing me for the whole 2 years for saying, why did you say this and why did you say that? They have finally said that I should have the join button. And if there is a YouTube join button, so they approved it over this weekend, then one can have members only discussions and member only posts. So one can be a little more uh, closer in the discussion, and these can be a little more private. Of course, these are still live things, but these can be member only. So, anyways, Um, this is what was in my mind. So for today, I'm just so passionate. I want to once again say this. I see so many patients bouncing around because even their doctor are not aware of what is the right approach. And they're going from one doctor to the other doctor to the other doctor. And the reason we are all who are practicing are the we are obedient to the algorithms. I'm trying to use as nice words as possible. We're obedient to the algorithm. So if the algorithm doesn't tell us to do something, then we do not know how to think in those directions. So for such cases, patients' life and death, quality of life, misery, amount of money they're spending, that all can be improved if the patient knew better. Asking a doctor to go figure out somebody's illness is not going to make lots of difference. But asking the patient to educate themselves deeply, like we've been doing for 2 years, not WebMD level, but deeply understanding the mechanisms and then thinking, I think can make the whole difference for a patient. Anyways, um, with this, JH says, that's me. I have wasted thousands on doctors like this. Can't do it anymore. Yes, just the labs, just the labs and the diagnostics and the misery and going to the doctor here and here and here. And every doctor continues to provide a higher rate. You know that we have doctors who are $3,000, $4,000 an hour. We have actually had them. Okay, so let's do some quick news roundup. And then there are some good questions as well. And I saw um, Casey says, algorithms has made me waste years. Yes. Casey, imagine the quality of life, the time spent in misery, amount of money that goes in fees, labs, and then the disappointment, then the financial impact. There is just too much. Robin says that will be totally brilliant. Thank you. The thing is this, doctors cannot do this. You cannot ask a doctor, I mean, you can, but you cannot ask a doctor to say, please be more aware of the latest research and in depth understanding of my disease. That's just how the life is. YouTube chat says, I'm a member of another YouTube vlog, and they can be aware you are a member when you comment, and also you get more access. It's a good thing too. Thank you. Actually, YouTube had so they had an agent who spoke with me and said you should turn these on, and then they asked me to make badges. So whoever is a YouTube member, they get a badge. Plus, they get I'm given 4 emoticons that I can offer to the members that they can use those emoticons. And as there are more members, then the number of emoticons I can offer increase. So it's a fun thing that they do. Um, okay, so I wanted to do news roundup, but let's do some questions. Vinod says, does recurrent local inflammation, for example, due to frequently repeated ulcers, wounds, etc., potentially lead to chronic systemic inflammation over time? There are certain ways that it can be. For example, let's say there is an ulcer and it continues to be that way. Now there are going to be a couple of dysregulations. One is that the food digestion itself and the GIT's health would start becoming deteriorated, which will turn into systemic issues. Secondly, the when the inflammation is occurring again and again, we never know when a cell's broken parts. So, Vinod, imagine with me, I imagine every cell like a treasure box which is closed. And our immune system is standing outside and does not know what is inside this treasure box. If you break this, all the jewels and things from inside they fall out. The nucleus, the broken mitochondria, the cytochrome C enzyme from the mitochondria, the RNAs, the pieces of DNA, the histones, microtubules. There are so many things that are spilled out that our immune system is actually not aware of. So when immune system cells see that, they can become self-reactive and develop an autoimmune disease. So, and of course, we know that recurrent injuries can cause cancers, but yes, depends how much recurrent, how long, and then what is the control over the whole situation. Good question. So, meanwhile, in America says, please, can you explain the mechanism by which antibiotics can trigger MCAS worse? Yes. So, actually, very simple mechanism. Let me open my drawing board. So, basic idea is this. Imagine here we have a mast cell. This is a mast cell. I always make mast cell looking a little dumb because they really go off, right? Unnecessarily. Well, they think that they're doing something good, but they can end up hurting us. So, mast cell activation simply means that we have the mast cell degranulating. Now, for a mast cell to degranulate, there can be antigens attached to it, which got short circuited by an antibodies attached to it. These red ones are antibodies, which got short circuited by an antigen, or mechanical changes in the life of this mast cell. For example, you taking a shower, or temperature changes, for example, cold shower or too hot shower, or heat, sunlight. There can be so many kind of triggers that can cause the mast cell to become triggered. Now there are antibiotics that can, on the first time when you take the antibiotics, they can actually act to produce antibodies. And once the antibodies are produced and they are now on the mast cells, then the next time when that antibiotic is taken, mast cells can degranulate. So antibiotic related activation or even allergic reactions are very common. This is why we say if you are allergic to this drug, don't take it. So a smaller type of that will be mast cell activation. Love the drawing. Thank you. This is a mast cell. Texas says we can make it. So Texas is not well. Texas, I hope you're okay. Me discussing that you have COVID, and so please, uh, Lisu also has COVID. So thoughts, prayers, not the kind of thoughts and prayers, but actually anything, please, if you need it, tell us. We are here. Jessica says, last time I saw a doctor, he Googled my symptoms and told me what to do. Yeah, so because your symptoms may be falling out of his normal day to day mainstream. And I think it is important to understand the disease before the management is done. Kini says that you and the cool beans keep me from going down into the negative spiral of despair. Thank you and stay strong. YouTube 108, you betcha says, yes, we get special badges so you know who are we are when we comment. Yes. So I uploaded 4 um, Luffy themed badges and 4 Luffy themed emoticons. Actually, 6 badges for someone who's been a member now versus 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, no, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, and 2 year, and then emoticons which are Luffy themed as well. Bob says, I think some doctors educate themselves about the latest research and are better doctors for it. I don't think they all do. Yeah, majority don't. And that's a bad thing. Cute, I want a badge. Anything for a badge. Yes. So I actually kept the prices to a lower level so that we can purchase them with not much of a hassle to ourselves. I think so. One is 299, another is 7 or 5.99, and one is 24. So Robin says, love the kitty badges and emojis. Thank you. I will get more made. First, I was trying to make them by myself, and I felt that I was not making the best. So I bought them off of Etsy, and then I plan to get more made, which are more like in our style. Excuse me. Casey says, can you add lots of bubble on surface of the granules? Surface for the granules. Oh, yes, of course. So these guys actually have a lots of bubbles in them, and these are their granules which then open up. Okay, let's do a very quick roundup with the news as well. So starting with the monkeypox, um, cases more than double to 26. So this is the I believe Dutch. So some 26 residents of have now Netherlands have now tested positive for monkeypox, said Dutch Public Health Institute (RIVM). The announcement on Monday was more than double the total revealed in the last update 5 days earlier, when 12 people were known to be infected with the virus. The first case diagnosed in the Netherlands was announced on May 20th. May 20th. Today is May 31st. And the incubation time is 2 to 3 weeks. There are 2 known strains of the monkeypox virus, and both originate in Africa. The virus has been spreading. We know that. Then monkeypox causes fever, headaches, swollen lymph nodes, muscle aches, and back pain. And please don't fall for folks who are just continuing to fear monger. This is so. I'll tell you what part of it is a scary part, and that is the association with sexual transmission is something that should not or was not seen before. Why is it happening now is kind of curious. However, it still seems to be at least just stay away from the conspiracy theories for some time. Please do me that favor. Again, totally up to you. But um, if you're a cool bean, then don't get into that trap yet. We'll see how it goes. Then here is another news. The prevalence of SARS-CoV-2 infection and update of COVID-19 antiviral treatment during the BA2 and 2.12.1 surge. So this one is the Paxlovid related things. So main outcomes of this study was prevalence of SARS-CoV-2 infection during a 14-day period weighted to represent the New York City adult population. So if I go to the Individuals with SARS CoV 2 were asked about awareness, use of antiviral medication. Results was an estimated 22.1% of respondents had SARS CoV 2 infection during the study period, corresponding to about 1.5 million adults. Prevalence was estimated at 34.9% among individuals with comorbidities, 14.9% among 65 plus, 18.9% among the 65 years, and 18.9% among unvaccinated persons. Hybrid protection against severe disease from vaccination prior infection was 66.2% among those with COVID and 46.3% among those without. Among individuals with COVID, 55.9% were not aware, 55.9% were not aware of the antiviral nirmatrelvir ritonavir or Paxlovid, and 15.1% reported receiving it. So can you imagine this? 55.9% not aware, 15.1 reported receiving it. Conclusion and relevance. The true magnitude of New York City BA1, BA2, and 12 surge was vastly underestimated by routine SARS-CoV-2 surveillance. And so that's an interesting news that people are actually not aware of the drugs. And I believe if I um, can share this as well, speaking with Texas, it's very difficult to get it as well, which should not have been the case. Then here is another. This is Evusheld. So we'll talk about Evusheld tomorrow. Nasal COVID vaccines are being tested in 7 clinical trials. How would they work? So the good news with the vaccines that are mucosal, for example, nasal or oral, is that they will provide, because of their route of entry, they will provide better IgA, which will cover mucosal membranes better. So viral load on the mucous membranes or new attack on the mucous membranes will be, in theory, uh, lesser than if the vaccine is given in the deltoid muscle, for example. North Korea rolls back lockdown, says virus flare up controlled. So that's interesting to see. And US and Canada investigating strawberries linked to hepatitis A outbreak. So this is A. WHO says it's not concerned about a monkeypox pandemic at the moment, but it's too soon to rule it out completely, meaning they said it both ways. Now, yes, Doug, are you able to hear Luffy? I thought that my mic was not that sensitive. M. Gregory says, seems like the same old news. Yes. Texas says, crazy trying to get tested and treated in my county. Please, that places that are listed don't even know they are listed by the US HHS as sources for Evusheld either. That's not good. Meanwhile, in America says, how would you approach treatment in MCAS patient with diagnosed bacterial infection? Trying the drugs that may not have the would be less allergic. And so every patient can have some drugs that can cause them to have allergies and others not. So they'll have to test them. Bob says, I can't hear Luffy. Luffy was meowing a second ago. And at the same time, Doug said meow, so I thought Doug heard him. You're very welcome. Art Ninjiok says, saunas lower inflammatory markers and heat shock proteins is seen. induces IL-6 and nuclear repair factor 2. Have you done any research on saunas use in COVID? I have not specifically for this topic, and I had been meaning to talk about it that cold or hot, too cold and too hot actually are protective, and I wanted to discuss how they are protective. And again, this is not a medical advice. Don't make yourself too cold. They have to be proper protocol to do that. Kini says, I have reordered my lufimectin and LDN for LH. I believe that's helping. Good to know. Vinod says, population size is unsustainable. I think we'll be okay. The ratio of patients able to doctors is okay. So that is correct, what you're saying. If I could say ratio of patient to up to date doctors, and not up to date with the algorithm, but up to date with the disease process, that ratio is very less. At the risk of offending my colleagues, sometimes doctors almost do not seem like doctors. They seem like more of a here is the disease, here is the protocol, do that. Doug says funded by Pfizer. Is that the study, the one where the prevalence was not known? Let's see. Are they trying to promote their drug? So the funding for this project was provided by the CUNY Institute for Implementation Science in Population Health, cuny.isph.org. I don't know if they are University of New York. So this is the study protocol was approved by the Institution Review Board of the City University of New York. So that is CUNY. So City University of New York. Hopefully not Pfizer. Alexander says this is boring. Sorry. This is a chit chat. Barbara says the badges sound cute. The information is priceless. Thank you very much. DDS says this cafe channel isn't big enough yet for membership. Yes, the other channel is. So Cynthia says where to find emoticons and badges. So Cynthia, the other channel has the emoticons and badges, which I started. In theory, if you go there, then there should be a. I'm gonna try to see. I didn't even see yet. If you see there, should be able to see a join button. Yes, let me show you. That button is on. So if you go here to this to the other channel, then this is the join button. And if you click on the join button, then something happens here. So see these badges. So these were the Luffy or cat ear badges, and here are the emoticons. So what I wanted was the angry Luffy is the Luffy with a gun, and then there is a cool dude Luffy with glasses, and then there is a shocked Luffy, and then there is a happy Luffy sipping at the Coke. So I will be allowed to upload more emoticons once there are members. And the membership is $2.99, $6.99, and $24.99. These are the default. What are the so if you go and check them out, so $2.99 badges and emoticons, $6.99 badges, emoticons, plus early access to new videos, which I haven't yet done. photos and status updates just for the members, and then Zoom call just for our members. So that is what's happening. Alicia says, love the gun. Yes, I loved it too. John says, if you buy a house in Portugal for 500k euros, they will give you a passport. Nice. Alquin, thank you very much. I saw your coffees and I saw your five turtle pet names. So I'm going to ask my family to give some pet names. DDS says Luffy with a gun, Luffy angry. So Margaret says, does Kyrie have a badge? So I think I'll add more badges. These are kind of cat badges that should probably cover both. M. Gregory says, boring is good. No news is a good news. Yes, the hot news is are on the other channel. John says, what did you do over the long weekend? So I'll tell you what I did. So the first day, I uh, wanted to make these emoticons and badges by myself. So I agonized over it the whole day long. I kept saying the action should be this way and the Luffy should be that way. And I spent the whole day and I could not figure out what should be the right. I mean, I'm not an artist of these specific kind of things. So the day was lost in that. Then the next day, I decided that I will get it by an artist. So I went to Etsy and found them and I uploaded them and it created these plans and everything. So I think about one or two of the day, by that time I was done with this. Then my actual weekend started. So I like to read books. So I started a book called Oversubscribed. That is one. And I had started one more book. I forgot. That means it didn't make a huge impact on me. So I started the books. So then near, so that was the second day. The third day, I wanted to do a deeper dive in the other book, the Oversubscribed. So what I usually do is, if I get a chance, for last couple of years, I didn't get too many of such days, even when I had the weekends. But now I kind of stole yesterday. So what I do is I sit down in the car and I just drive, let's say, towards Los Angeles. And if the book is 6 hours, I'll just keep going half 3 hours towards Los Angeles. And then when the 3 hours are done, I'll come back and that will make 6 hours and I'll read the whole book. So I went, I think, hour and a half. This book was 6 hours, but hour and a half later, I just decided to come back. So I was back by 2 or 3 during the day. Then what did I do afterwards? I made some notes about the book and I made some plans about the other channels and so on. I did this camera thing, this new camera, which I'm not becoming too fond of because of the lens is really soft. So remaining day I spent with this camera, went to Best Buy to buy cables to attach the camera and keep it on power and so on. So by the night I was just playing with this. That was my weekend. How about you? Renee says, how many times can we get the COVID? It depends what is our body's immune system state and how much mutations are out there. So we could keep getting COVID. But generally, for example, I suspect that I have been exposed more times But if full blown COVID was once, and then the next ones are just 1 or 2 days of tiredness, and I become okay afterwards. So it depends a person's immune system and what are the variations or changes. Meeple Art says, so what is the solution in your mind to the problem of doctors needing more not pharma biased information, aside from Dr. Bean website, of course? So for the bigger countries, bigger in terms of big pharmas in them, I don't think there is an easier solution out until people with more resources who can move medicine in a different direction. For example, Mark Cuban is trying to create a cheaper medical solution system, right? The drugs, and he cannot get every drug because of the patents. So, for example, he's trying, or Walmart is opening up the clinics, or CVS is trying minute clinics. Again, the whole thing is still stuck in the hands of insurance and in the hands of liabilities and FDAs and CDCs. And as long as there will be liabilities, there are going to be hesitation in doctors to stay behind the protocols, because protocols give them protection. But the way I thought about that was the most important thing to do, which I observed in the last 2 years. So if you look at my work was actually more targeted towards doctors, medical students, nursing students, nurses, and PAs, right? So healthcare professional or students. But the work that was done for healthcare workers or not, for general public, that work had much more impact. And that surprised me. And even when the discussion used to be, I'm not able to prescribe, I do not practice in the US, I cannot give advice, even then, the amount of knowledge that was valuable, just the knowledge that was valuable for patients to understand or people to understand what to do, what may be happening, what to expect, was a huge benefit, in my opinion. I actually sat down yesterday and I was kind of tracking how did this whole 2 years, did they pan out, and just from a value point of view, if you think about it this way, and to continue to answer your question, I think patient education to this deeper level, not WebMD or Google level, but this deeper level with the dots connected is very important. That is where, so Dr. Bean's site is not sufficient. I wish I had a bunch of resources to accelerate this kind of teaching, to hire more people and hire more reviewers who would review that the content is created with this kind of depth and ease of understanding. But barring that, I can only attack the main diseases and main issues. And here is how I was seeing the value of this. So this value could not have been given if there were not people who wanted it. The value was about 2 years, correct? And let's say 200 hours, 200 days each year. So 400 days. And from 12 to, most of the days, 12 to 9. Nowadays, we are a little less. So 8 or 9 hours. So let's say 8 hours. That makes 3,200 hours. And then if you give 500, my colleagues are mostly 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 or so. So let's say 500 per hour. That makes it $1.5 million worth of effort added, and it seemed like that value was useful. So, meaning, sure, I gave this much of the value. Was there someone who said, I want this value? If that value was useless, then I could give $10 million worth of time and that would be useless. There was a lot of value taken from this. And so this is where I think world will have to eventually then reach, that patient will have to become so deeply knowledgeable that they could interact with doctor for their disease almost on equal basis. So let's answer a few questions and then break for today. Meanwhile, in America says, if MCAS is the result of the body overproducing antibodies or mast cells not behaving correctly, shouldn't treatment focus on calming haywire immune system rather than stabilizing mast cells? Both. It depends. That's the thing. The in-depth understanding of what is going on in one patient. Is this the mast cell that are not stable, or is it the antibodies that are more in number? Because if you think about it, the same medicine is taken by another person and they do not have this problem. Then why does this person who has this allergy, why did they develop? What is going on in their tissues? That in-depth analysis, I think people spend their life in that miserable state for the whole life without anyone going deeper into trying to understand what's going on. That is the deficiency of our healthcare system. Texas says, where AI has failed us, Dr. Bean is, we'll, we'll do what we can, definitely. Our dog says, yes, I agree. Patient must become even more knowledgeable than the doctor. After all, it is the patient's body. Yes. And for a doctor, it's just another number. For the patient, it's their life. And this is a very important thing, that doctors do not like patients to come with their own knowledge. They become offended, they become majority, and they become defensive. Hallberg says numbers are low. Missed a factor of 2, and 3,200 multiplied by 500 is 1.6 million. Okay, thank you. I was trying to keep it on the lower end. So, 3,200 plus, and yes, yes, 16. Yep, thank you for correcting it. Meanwhile, in America says, if MCAS is the result of body overproducing antibodies, so I just responded to that. Vinod says, how do good doctors unbias themselves from using stereotypical contemporary approach to diagnosis and treating a patient? Can they? Is there really a form, for really a from scratch method? As long as a doctor has an opportunity to see a lot of patients and get a lot of fee, they will continue to do that. Now, there are cases, for example, in other countries where the medical work is not fee oriented but rather pay, or hospitalists are there the problem is burden of the patients to say you have to see 100 today or you have to see 50 today. So I think in our multiple kinds of healthcare systems, none of the healthcare systems have this built into them to bring a patient up to speed. And most of the time, medical field can get away with patient being ignorant because patient can actually not know what to tell them, and whatever the doctor tells them is sufficient because they don't have to explain or stand behind what they just said. They just made a decision. Then another doctor would look at it and say, well, the decision is wrong. And so the patient is now in a strange state, in a gaslit state. I'm trying to be more polite. But so the what will happen is that there will be a need for patient to be educated, and for that, remember, I keep saying that the student should know medicine from 8th grade, not to become a doctor but to understand their bodies. Similarly, a patient should know this. So there has to be this kind of educational system as we are seeing here with the COVID that we saw, that brings a patient to this depth of understanding so that they can decide who is treating me well, who is not. They can do their thinking correctly. They can open up a book and understand what the book is saying. I see many comments on the YouTube side where sometimes people are not that thoroughly aware of the medical concepts, and they would just take one high level concept and just kind of have a twisted thinking about it. So when the patient becomes more aware of the concepts at a deeper level and clear, they can then be on their own to learn and understand and interact with the doctor. That is where we'll all have to reach. Rennie says, you have helped so many of us. I learned a lot. Thank you. You're very welcome. Kini says, I pray that I find a doctor as good as Dr. Bean here in Minnesota. I won from. Yeah. Paul Borg says, I remember when doctors and lawyers were professionals, people just trying to help society, not trying to make money for themselves. It passes a long time ago. It passed a long time. That is correct. And if you see this as well, um, nowadays, even if a doctor wants to, you saw that with the COVID, that doctors wanted to think for their patients, some, if not all, and imagine the punishment they got. So not only the doctors do not have an incentive, there is a counter incentive that if they try to think outside of the box, they are punished and they are made an example of. That others would look at that and say, you know what, I would rather just give this algo. I would rather say, there is nothing, stay at home till you become blue and then come in and get oxygen. That whole system is structured um, around the money. And so, as long as the healthcare facility is out of a regular person's budget, meaning they cannot get it without insurance, we'll stay stuck in this state. John Snyder says this chat is still going on. Should we stop, John? Welcome. Denise says, many of my doctors who are specialists in MCAS are now concierge medically. Yeah. So Vinod says that, but expecting patients to know more is just taking the respect out of doctor's profession. No, I actually see it differently. With the advent of and availability of the cell phones and the internet and the ease of research and the books all electronic and the um, researches and theses and studies available, and with people like me who can come in and offer free how to understand them, the ability for a patient has actually immensely improved to understand their situation. Imagine if you take these mechanisms out, then the patient is left with the books. And understanding the books is not going to be a straightforward thing, because the book is going to be built upon first year's terms and thinkings and anatomy and physiology, and then comes pathology. But with the latest technologies, you could just keep reading an article and keep going to the dependent terms and understand them, or see videos and see movies. So we are at a point where patients will have to do this, and that will force doctors to either upgrade themselves or become outdated and probably irrelevant. Dr. Ironworm says, "You are doing such a service to humanity, Dr. Bean. Thank you very much." I I want to go one level deeper, and I am not able to understand how to do it at scale, or how to do it. And that is to actually then sit down with one patient and just have that educational discussion with them, their body, their labs, but not a prescription model, not a management model, but an education model. That I think would be very interesting. You enable the patient to think about their disease. I mean, I'll give you an example. The immunology lectures that we have done in last 2 years, I can bet no general practicing doctor can hold a continuous discussion with a cool bean who has listened to these lectures. Even doctors cannot. Majority of, I'm not talking about immunologists or rheumatologists or cancer doctors and so on. I'm talking about general practicing doctors. They cannot connect these dots. And if we can learn that much, that these are the same concepts that can then help us understand chronic diseases and cancers. And so there are tiny bit of refinements to understand a bunch of more things. That is where I think patient has to reach. Saraswati says, "I'm having surgery and I've studied it, so good luck. Watched it and my doctor was very happy to answer." That's very good. And good luck. I read a comment from Jim. Jim, not nice. Yes, that is correct. In some cases, doctor's career can be over with the malpractice. So Vinod says, add one more agenda point to your medical university dream. Make immunology a subject in high school. So I actually wanted to make the whole physiology part of pathology, select diseases. Imagine, do this. Pick the top 10 diseases. Let's say I'm in the US. So if you look at the top 10 diseases, I actually have a whole plan. As you can tell, I think about these things. So, top 10 diseases in the USA. Right. So, here, heart disease, cancer, accidents, chronic lower respiratory disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, influenza. Take these and go in depth. Let's say we spend 2 months per one disease or disease category. That would mean 1, 2, 3, 10, 20 months, 2 years. So imagine 10th and 11th grade, or 11th, 12th grade, or 9th, 10th grade. One can hammer in the student's mind these diseases and their mechanisms. So when students sees these signs, they can be very quickly able to understand what's going on. That's where this education has to reach. Our high schools should make reading mandatory. Okay, agreed. I think that the Cool Beans, I was looking at a comment. I think Cool Beans group is the most aware and deeply um, understanding of the medical concepts among any of other presenters. Ramnik says, although a doctor's job seems routine, but to a patient they are God. I remember the time when I was not a doctor and I used to see one. So now I'm going to say something that maybe will offend some people. When I started my work in the hospital, I used to say that for a patient, a doctor is a saint. They can kill them by malpractice. And if they can kill them because of the malpractice or negligence, then they can protect them from death as well. So if a patient is going towards certain death and a doctor is working hard, then I believe they can get their life extended. And that is the belief with which I started. Alive in Heels, Rima is here. You're such a great teacher, Dr. Bean, the best teacher. Thank you very much. Lisbeth says, just retired biology teacher, Dr. Bean, so much. You're very well. Thank you very much. So, Alive in Heels has a question for others because I had that. Has anyone heard of personalized repetitive TMS for COVID? We discussed this for tinnitus, but not for COVID. CDC has a program called Work at Health where workplaces are supposed to acquire lifestyle. That's not going to work. This is equal to having a doctor and you go to the doctor multiple times. Then what? Why would a doctor take this pain? Imagine these 2 years, this pain to explain in such details. That's what is needed, not the programs. Casey says, agreed, best educated. Thank you. John says, Dr. Bean, thanks to you and some wonderful cool beans. Absolutely. Meeple Art says, and you have done that for us, Dr. Bean. Thank you. I'm most grateful. You're very welcome. So in Pakistan, you graduate high school at 16, US 18. Correct. So I think at the end of the day, from the grades point of view, um, high school for us is 10th grade. I think in the US, it is 12th grade. So we have 10th grade and we are out of the high school. Then 11th and 12th is the intermediate school, and then post graduation or graduation. Hallberg says most US students don't even seem to remember how many states there are in the US. Not sure how will this well intended health will be picked up by many. Still worth doing. I can tell you how. By drawing eyes. So I have the whole plan ready. By drawing eyes, by entertaining them with these diseases and mechanisms. This can only be done when presenters love it. So when I am presenting, I love it. That is why I am presenting with those eyes when I'm drawing them. Imagine I actually draw for every cell, every line I draw. And I make the eyes and I put the dot in the eyes, I make the pupils. I do it for every single line that you see in these diagrams. And so they have to entertain. If they are able to entertain, look, we they build movies for us which take 3 4 years to build or create, and these are only an hour long or hour and a half long, and millions of dollars are spent and billions of dollars are earned because these are entertaining. Look at immunology, how entertaining it is, how much the whole thing is a war, and it can be done that way as well. So it just has to be, eyes have to be there, and then students would like it. Rima says, you are unique in this, no one teaches this, was which is why we are hooked. Correct. So M Gregory says eyes. Yes, it's all about eyes. Eyes. It's all about eyes. Actually, the point of eyes is that there is a entertain, the one who is doing it, the one who is drawing it, is thinking of entertainment. So when they are thinking of entertainment, for example, I'll tell you, I really, really wish I redid the whole 2 years, but with each video, with a story, a beginning, a middle, and end. Here is a bacteria that comes in, and there's a fight that is happening, and the whole hero and villain and destruction. I just didn't have enough time every day, so I start at 12 and I end up by 5 or 6. That is not sufficient time to create a high quality, a video level quality or Hollywood level quality video. Of course, that would, they take for 1 hour, they take 3 years and millions of dollars. But it's the intent to make it entertaining and fun. And I think that would change the game. And at some point, humanity has to bite the bullet and do it. COVID gave us a push and showed us that this can be done. And we saw the result of this. So at some point, the whole planet has to figure out we need to do this. And once we have one generation that has been taught that way, then the future generations would build on top of that. So, as you can tell, I am so passionate about it. Eyes, yes. Vinod says you also miss the meatballs, correct? So, with this, let us break for today. Then it says, we see your passion for teaching awakens the desire to learn. So, I'll tell you something fun. Teaching for me is a vehicle to clarify medicine. So, the passion is to bring medicine at scale to people. That is a actual driver, is that it turned out that I had to teach in this way to be able to clarify. And now I keep looking for, is there another teacher who can do it? Can I give him give somebody some money and they can do it? Can KoolBeens put together money to create a company where we can give someone others to give money to produce this at scale? I think about this all the time. So this evolution that you saw was mostly towards the base. It was in service of trying to make medicine easy. Meeple Art says you should try animating a cartoon on heart disease and present it to us as a trial for school students. Absolutely. Remember, once I started animating as well, Cake and Cove, the thought was to animate these things as well. But the work is so much, and I just uh, didn't have enough stamina, time. John says my drawing still suck. We will keep doing the drawing lessons. So on this note, the way you can help is you can share and like the videos, and that in itself will bring in more viewers, that can bring in more ads, and I can have some support. Other than that, of course, there are some links in the description as well, so you can support it. Thank you very much. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. Lisu, I hope you recover quickly and completely. Texas, please recover completely. And I would call you as well tomorrow. Thank you. And I didn't see Sky Frog. Sky Frog, um, I would call you as well. I hope you are doing okay. So there's a question. Casey says, Art Thursday. Yes, let's do that. Cabbage Jack says, hey, Dr. Bean, am I still the main character? Always. Cabbage is the main character. So Cyberner says, we need to clone you. Thank you very much. This is what is happening. This process is happening right now. So thank you. And I would see you tomorrow.